Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Hi. How's everybody doing today? Good? Great. We love to hear that. So welcome to our panel this afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about best practices and strategies for teasing audio early on social platforms. So my name is Sam Cope. I work at FUGA Distribution. I'm our Director of Digital Accounts for the Americas, and I will be moderating our panel today. So I will pass it off to our panelists, starting with Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Coleman. I work at Meta across all of our apps, so Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. And I lead indie relations on the label side in North America.
Hi, I'm Celia Palau Lodge. I wear a few different hats. So I'm an international consultant under my company Blue Cherry, but I work with Cooking Vinyl, a few festivals here and there, and independent artists.
My name is Courtney. I work at 2Lost. We're an independent distribution platform, and I head all of our label services.
All right. Well, let's kick it off. So obviously the topic pretty much sums up what we're going to cover here, but let's start at the very beginning. You decide that you want to tease audio early. Where do you begin your planning process? How far ahead of release should you start putting plans into motion? Like, what is the first step when you want to tease audio?
I want you to take it first, and then I can add on. Okay. I would say as soon as you have the audio, right? Start listening to it, start capturing ideas of like what could people really think. The way I would think about it is listen to the mood, listen to the content, and whether it's based on the words or the feeling, like try to release it with an image or a visual that you feel like other people would be inspired to create around, right? So the way I always think of it is like what creates emotion? If something's creating emotion, it's creating shares. It's creating people to want to use that track in their own lives. Almost think about teasing music as a way for people to utilize that as a soundtrack to their own lives, because then that distribution will get further and further and further. And when the song drops, there's already going to be that awareness out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I would also add that maybe if you're on a label side, perhaps you want to start speaking to your distributor and the platform that you choose to tease your audio on, probably 6 weeks to maybe a month in advance, just to make sure that you're working with them, you're working and hoping to get enough editorial visibility with the platform you've chosen to tease your audio with. So it is really about creating a plan with everyone involved.
While keeping really authentic to the artist. You'll hear me say authenticity like a million times.
It's important. It's important. You have anything to add?
Oh, I mean, I really would say, like Emily said, obviously, as soon as you have it, because you really just want people to use it and almost see how other people are using it, which could, ultimately help you as far as what you're going to lean into further and push as your, campaign.
As far as the window of time from when you're pre-releasing to when something is actually coming out, do you find that is 2 weeks enough? Is it too much? I feel like probably too much isn't fair, but are there any kind of windows in that regard that you find seem to give enough of a runway or work well?
I feel like it really depends on if there's anything else going on. So it might be that your artist is touring the month beforehand and they're actually performing a track that has been unreleased. You might want to actually start teasing that audio whilst they're on tour, and then it just all builds in to this bigger campaign. But if you don't really have those elements in place, I feel like 2 weeks may be just a tad long. Because you don't want to just spoil it. You don't want to
I mean, you also don't want to start pushing it and have people engaged if you don't have enough content to consistently keep it going, because worst case scenario is everybody's excited and then it doesn't come out, and then when you drop it, you've lost momentum.
Yeah, we see a good time frame of like 1 to 2 weeks. To be honest, it gives enough time for people to actually see it, create content for it to spread, but not too much time where it leads people to be interested and then not interested before the release.
And what would you say as far as logistical challenges or things to think about when you're creating your sounds, delivering your snippets? What should people be looking out for, and what are some of the best practices that often get overlooked?
A big thing for Meta, I'll only speak to our platform, is remembering to rename audio if they're using original sound. If people don't know what it is, it loses all that excitement, right? So we highly recommend using like teaser, pre-release, something that's going to drive that excitement and for people to be like, oh crap, there's something new coming. Like, I'm excited, and for them to get engaged with it. So renaming audio is like one of the biggest things I see that a lot of artists forget to do.
And also making sure that you are keeping track of all the original audios. If you're teasing it on platforms, or a fan's teasing it, and the fan's original sound starts to get really lit, and you're only watching yours, you might totally kind of miss, if they aren't merged, the momentum that you could have acted on. So kind of just monitoring it and making sure that if they're not tied, it's speaking to whoever is best to tie that and make sure that all the videos are synced in one place.
Yeah, I also believe now on TikTok you can create like small playlists, for example, which makes it really easy for the creators to find your tracks. And perhaps you want to actually have 3 different time frames in that song. You've got an intro, you've got a verse, and maybe a chorus. So renaming those and making it as easy and clear for the users on the platform to use your music is like key.
Even if you're delivering multiple timestamps, just staying on top of it, because changing the timestamp takes longer than just staying on top of it and making sure that you don't lose momentum in that time of having to change the timestamps.
Another thing I would just mention, if you are using original audio on our platforms and you've renamed it, etc., make sure you keep using that original audio rather than creating another original audio and another original audio and another original audio, because it bifurcates all of the creations under separate pages. So it's really hard for the general user to get inspiration. They tend to go to audio pages for inspiration. But if the content's not all on one page, it becomes even harder for people to engage.
And then let's say that still happens. What are options if creations have kind of been split across a couple of different pages? Like what allows you or prevents you from perhaps migrating those pages?
Yeah, so for us, you can go through our label ops team, whoever manages your rights manager, can submit that merge request. Especially, I recommend that once the release happens, so you can bring all those creations to the audio page. Whoever you deliver your content through. Mm-hmm. However they prefer, your distributor.
As far as a more creative approach, we're going to pivot slightly away from the ops and delivery side. What type of content and approach from a fan perspective seems to really resonate well? Like, what are some strategies or examples you've seen that really resonated?
I've been across so many different viral campaigns and across all genres, and really it's a lot of what Emily said as far as like authenticity goes, and what makes sense for the record, because it could be a record that isn't like a club hit, but it's great to use with intention, whether it's about losing someone or someone you miss, or use this audio over a video that kind of elicits any type of different emotion. So the biggest thing would be figuring out how you're going to use it and making it obvious to the fans as far as how they should use it. So, you know, if it's an aesthetic thing where everybody puts Sunset Lover every time they open a hotel, you know, doors or anything, like aesthetic travel vibes, or, you know, if it's a sad song, putting it over something emotional. But, you know, if it's something where you just have content and you want to put the lyrics on the screen, it's a bunch of different things, and you can also kind of see how people are using it, and if a couple people use it the same way, work on capitalizing on it that way as well.
Yeah, I'd also like say, you know, when you're doing this, it's important for everyone to understand that music becomes secondary to whatever the action is. So it's about how people will use that song in their like day-to-day life on social media. So whether that's just as
Like a transition, like
Right.
a beat.
or like, you know, opening your fridge every morning. It's just something everyone does. So it's about trying to connect those moments with your track. But again, it's really important to tell people how you want them to use your track. Because, I mean, we've had examples where it hasn't really worked that well. It hasn't actually sort of crossed over and stuck enough with the audience, just because we didn't really tell them how we wanted them to use that audio. So we had like a viral moment. We had like, you know, over 5 million views in like less than a day, but that didn't translate much into streaming or anything else. And it's about how many videos people are creating using your music. So that is also, I would say, a key element when you are looking to use, tease audio on social media, essentially.
So I like everything that they said. I'd say it also as like a finding the perfect medium, right? Of something that's very authentic to the artist and how they see the song and what's meaningful to them, while also being relatable in a way that other people can see that reel or that TikTok video, etc., and think, I have a moment just like this, right? Because then that allows them to see, I'm going to save this sound for when it's time for me to post that video, right? So it's finding that relatability so that it gives other people inspiration while also telling the artist's story, because that is also extremely important, because that's what brings a connection between their fans and the artist pages, which is just as important as well. So it's finding that happy medium.
And like TikTok will suggest 10 to 20 different videos, you know, with various pieces of content that might relate to different audiences and different use cases. And, you know, essentially a fan should be able to go to, you know, your TikTok profile where you have pinned videos, or, you know, your Reels section, and understand exactly how you want them to use it.
In terms of just content ideas, because also artists can kind of be sometimes in a place where they need ideas to spark what they want to post, right? Some things we see work really well is text overlays work really well to give context. Lyrics, like having the lyrics on the screen. If it's a very lyrical song and those lyrics can be used by other people to tell their own stories as well, that we see that as a very powerful thing. And honestly, anything that creates emotion, we really, like I said earlier, it just really drives both views, interest in the song, because if you can attach an emotion to the release of a song, they're going to be that much more engaged and that much more of a super fan leading into release.
And CapCut, if you don't want to think of things on your own, but you want something to do well, there are apps for that, and it's very helpful, and usually, you know, is at least better than someone trying to produce like HD content that, you know, might not hit with their audience.
I think you've kind of touched on this a little bit as far as, you know, ways where like an artist doesn't necessarily have to be in the content themselves, because as we know, not every artist is necessarily eager to be like in that sort of content. have you seen anything work really well where an artist is perhaps not wanting to do that, but has like found a way to still either engage fans or kind of incentivize their creation?
You can go.
I mean, jokes aside, but like cats, pets.
I post cat reels.
I mean, even David, like D4VD, David, like the way that he took off on TikTok wasn't because he was spamming about his new songs with selfie videos. It was like the project file running with lyrics over it. And that is literally what took off. And he was trending on Reels on TikTok, and now you see him everywhere. But he wasn't trying to be in content that didn't feel authentic, but that was what he used, and people still gravitated towards it because there is pretty much like a subset for everyone, and like producer TikTok happens to be big. So, you know, if you don't want to be dancing, they probably don't want to see you dancing anyway, so don't dance.
That's a great point. People can sniff out inauthenticity really easy. So I think it's always really, really important to understand their likes and their dislikes and their passions outside of music itself too, because also that's also what makes that person relatable to other people. So let's say they love traveling, right? Or they love going on the beach and walking on sunsets, you know, like they don't have to be in the video themselves. They can post something that's really meaningful to them that, like I said, if watching a sunset evokes some sort of emotion.
Yeah.
That's why you see so many videos of it. And overlaying their music on top of that. So I think depending on who that person is, their interests, and building out from there is really important.
I mean, like, just to add to that quickly, it's like I've had a rapper who was not trying to hear anything about TikTok, but every time he was, you know, creating a record, like he would travel. So I'm like, okay, use content from your travels and put that song behind it. Like your fans know your interest in what's real to you. So like an unenthusiastic video that you paid $10,000 for someone to dance to your music, if it doesn't make sense and your fans don't love watching dances, it's not gonna translate.
And then this is more broadly for short form, but I think it really does apply for teasing. People overthink short form video so much. People are just trying to get to know you and who you are and feel a deeper connection. Honestly, what we see posted on stories, like that's the stuff that actually works really well on Reels. And your artists are always in stories or snaps, etc. And how would they tease their audio in their stories? Kind of build off of that, because that's typically where they're showing their personality the most.
We actually didn't talk about this ahead of time, but now I'm getting ideas as we're sitting here. How often would you say artists should be posting to like maintain that momentum and excitement, but not necessarily over inundate their fans or like overwhelm?
It does really depend on the audience, doesn't it? It's never one, you know, fits all. But I mean, yeah, usually I would say about 3 times a week minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what most best practice is on the TikTok end, Emily.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, very different per artist. Like I could talk best practices all day, but what works for someone's audience isn't going to work for the next. And that's why the insights tools are so important. I would say it's about content and being meaningful with your content. If you blast out, 3 reels in a week, that's all promotional. But if you post, 2 to 5 reels that have some sort of meaning behind it that shows the artist's excitement, their engagement, showing them relatable, like that's what's going to do well. But typically the recommendation is around 3 reels per day. I mean, 3 reels per week. Sorry, 3 reels per week. And then teasing and other things around. So like at least posting your stories like once a day, that kind of stuff around those posts as well. And definitely we do not recommend 3 reels per day, per week.
But I feel like per platform, it does vary because, TikTok will like try not to scare you and say 10 to 20. pre-release pieces of content, and that's not to say per week or whatever, but if you, for example, had posted 10 of the pieces of content on TikTok, not many of your fans or people who are going to find that piece of content is going to scroll and see all of them at the same time in a row. So the algorithm, and I guess also the different metrics of success per platform, like if one reel goes insane, the audio can, spike. But if you don't have a ton of creates under your audio on TikTok, your rep's not trying to hear how viral you are. So, it really just is different based on where you're posting.
And also to add on that, I feel like, it is still very important. And I want to keep highlighting this. You have to tell your audience what you want out of this in a way. It's not about just filling the silence or the gap, because otherwise it will just become a bit of an annoying piece of content, a bit like an ad. So it's just like, get one message, perhaps two max, and just keep trying to sort of feed that message and get your audience comfortable with what you're trying to get them to do.
And on that, because that's a really great point, you need to get that in front. How do you want your audience to use the sound? And also a really good way to do that is actually leaning into the tools on each individual app to help get that message across even more. So on Reels, I don't know if you guys have seen Add Yours on Stories. They're addicting to me. I lean into, anytime I see an Add Yours, I end up adding my own photo, right? They actually have that on Reels, right? So that allows you to have a prompt and be interactive with the people in your pre-release cycle in a way that's unique to the platform. Right? So always looking at the platform tools to see what might even maximize that visibility, that view even better.
And pin your content to the top because if yours isn't the highest performing now, especially on TikTok, it was a big, I guess, disconnect with going viral and anyone knowing who you are. So now you can, pin how you want people to use the sound, even if your video isn't the one with millions of views. So, anyone who is looking at that audio can still then see how you want them to use it. And I believe you can do that on Reels too, right?
Yep. And then something that's kind of even going back to the planning section. Sorry, I'm jumping around. But when you talked about frequency, something that's also important is to not only activate your platforms on release cycle, because then you have to build up that from the beginning. But actually maintaining consistently, keeping your audience engaged so that when you do pre-release audio, they're already engaged with your profile and going to see that content.
Exactly.
Another thing I think is helpful to touch on too is obviously sometimes we can kind of start the fire for these viral moments, but then a lot of times they just kind of happen. And so when something does kind of just take off on its own and raise its hand, how do you add fuel to that fire when it maybe wasn't something that you created yourself, but you obviously need to capitalize on that moment before it's gone?
I mean, when I see an audio and I see people using it the same way, as long as it's obviously authentic to the brand of the artist and not something that's so out of pocket that wouldn't make sense, I usually like to either encourage not only compilation type stuff where you are sharing, fan content that is all doing a similar thing across your socials and encouraging it, but the same way that you guys said, you can use a sticker on Reels. If you see a bunch of people creating, content with any type of mood or interest in mind that you think could translate to the average viewer that might find it, fan or not, add a prompt and talk to text so that people start leaning into the trend intentionally, whereas, initially it just came out of nowhere and was being used like that.
Do you want me to go or you got it? You go. Okay. So there's a couple points I have here, so bear with me. But the first is you should always go in with a plan, but have the flexibility to pivot. I love the word pivot. If something's starting to take off, lean into that. And even if it's not authentic specifically to the artist enough for them to lean in, they can still reward their fans for leaning in. So a couple ways to do that: share the stories, repost. On Instagram, on the audio page, you can even pin their reels to the top, which actually sends them a note saying that they were the artist's pick. It just makes them feel more engaged with the story, and especially leading into a release. You want people to feel part of the story so that they are even more vocally talking about the release and the artist. Another way is, like, if it does feel semi-organic to the artist, like, have them lean into that new challenge or that new trend, either by doing it themselves with their own spin on it or remixing someone else's. I've seen amazing reaction videos
People love
through
that.
remix,
Yeah.
and that can help fuel that fire.
People just want to be seen. So if you'll share them on the stories, more people will post. People who might not even know who you are. Like, they really just want artist recognition. I feel like at the end of the day, if you're a fan, you want to feel like you're championing that artist and showing people. So if you're using their audio and that artist is commending it, I feel like a lot of times I've had a lot more fans start to use it just because you reposted.
And it's really important in that pre-release cycle. So I just wanted to flag that. Like, the more you can get people to champion and talk about what's happening before it release will help you on release day. So really engaging with your community, making them feel heard and part of the story is really important.
I just wanted to add a last point to your question. And it's just like cross-promotion across different platforms, because you could be like, you know, having a viral moment on TikTok, but no one knows you outside of TikTok. So you kind of just like, I feel like when you are at that moment, that is the moment where you want to try and like spread that virality through, like, whether it's Instagram, whether it's like, eventually the goal is to hit, say, Spotify and the DSPs, because that's what we all want, don't we, from a viral moment. So yeah, it's just about, you know, trying to redirect your different audiences across these different platforms to understand like this sort of moment and try and share that across.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge point, because cross-promotion, especially because statistically 90% of the people who are looking at you on TikTok have no clue who you are anywhere else. It's one of the cheapest platforms to advertise on. So, you know, direct that traction to your Spotify or anything like that. But, you know, also merge your audiences so that you have all of those people in one, kind of supporting you with the same initiative. And if you plan to do cross promotion, take the watermark off. There's a bunch of great websites where you can link it and take it off, but do not keep it on especially Reels. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's definitely a way to have the content do a lot better. Correct me if I'm wrong. But.
No, it's correct. Please don't do watermarks. But one point that you made was really, really important, is that audiences are typically different on platforms. And something we talk about a lot. I know Instagram is the shiny place to be, at least on our platforms. It's really important to also have that content hit Facebook, because we've done so much research, and typically the people that follow you on Instagram are not the same as your followers on Facebook. So you're leaving a complete market completely untapped. Additionally, that just because an app has a certain demographic, let's say in the United States, it doesn't mean it's the same across the entire world. So, for instance, the Eastern world likely has a much younger Facebook audience than we do here. But if you're trying to build a global audience, it's important to be everywhere, or else you're just leaving people out of the mix.
All right, we're actually at time. Are there any final points to add before we wrap up? No? All right, great. Well, let's hear it for our lovely panelists.